Hey, this is Arthur Hill, Senior Technical Analyst with StockCharts.com. Yes, I am a real person, and this is my real face and real office. So today we're going to look at some trading setups using Bollinger Bands and Aroon. We use Bollinger Bands to identify the squeeze, and we use Aroon to identify the next directional signal. We're going to show some examples using IWM as well as some banking stocks. And of course, I'll finish with some stocks that are setting up and that do not report earnings soon. They report in September or October. Stay tuned. So looking at the S&P 500 here, which of course is the major benchmark for the stock market, we're still in an uptrend. You can see that, we've had pretty much a sharp surge, a little consolidation, another surge, a pullback, another surge, a very small pullback, and another surge. And we hit new highs throughout the latter part of June and here in July. So we had a pullback last week. It looks like we were going to get a breakout there on Friday, but fell back. I don't view that as like some big major failure and we're going lower. The trend is still up and we still have to err on the side of higher prices. What's interesting is with this decline that we've had over the last 4 or 5 days, if you look at the indicators, RSI 5 hit its lowest level since the rally began there in early June. And then you can see 10-period RSI is right near that 50 level. And that might be a momentum support level to watch. Now, I don't like to mention the Fed, but we do have a Fed meeting coming up, an announcement next week. And sometimes we get a bullish bias heading into that meeting and then a little bit of sell the rumor, buy the news, sell the rumor after the Fed announcements. Everybody and their dog is expecting a rate cut. So then that means we could move higher heading into that announcement. Now, as far as major support levels to watch, if we happen to get a pullback, you can see that broken resistance turns into support in that it's actually a 38 to 50% retracement zone as well in that 287.5, 290 area. And there you can see the rising 50-day moving average. So now I'm going to show you a little trading strategy using Bollinger Bands and Aroon. And before I do that, I want to just go over Bollinger Bands and Aroon. What exactly are they telling us? So here's a chart for IWM with the Bollinger Bands. And if you're wondering how I got them in that nice area format there, if you scroll down below the chart, which I am doing right now, you can see that I've got Bollinger Bands as an overlay there. For the style, I've set area. I've colored it pink. And then I put opacity at 0.3. And that makes them transparent so you can see the prices behind the bands. And then, of course, in the lower window, I added the Bollinger Band width indicator. And you can see I added an overlay, which is a horizontal line at 5. So when it dips below 5, I can see when there is a squeeze on. So let's look at the chart and see how that looks overall. Now, I've gone back around a year and a half to see how Bollinger Bands have acted over an 18-month period. And we can see there we got Bollinger Band width dipping below 5 in the early part of May. So we got a squeeze. And then right after that squeeze, we got a break above the upper Bollinger Band. And so that's a classic Bollinger signal when you have the squeeze. And you can even see there was a bit of a triangle at work there with those lines. So we got a breakout and a move to new highs. We got some more squeezes here in June and July and August as volatility did narrow. And you had a bit of a consolidation there. You can see, and a breakout from the consolidation. And then here's the bearish signal. You got another squeeze there in September, and we had a sharp break below the lower band. And there's the squeeze. You can see the band level was at its lowest level in quite a few months there in the middle part of September. And that led to the big decline. So if we fast forward now, you can see that we've had a squeeze here in early April. And then after that squeeze, we got a breakout. You would have to draw this falling flag. So there's the breakout. We got another squeeze at the end of April, and we got a break to the downside there. And we currently have a squeeze right now, and I'm going to highlight that in more detail on a candlestick chart next here. So for the next chart, we're going to look at Aroon. And on the price chart, I've got price channels. You can see it's the gray shading there. And if I scroll down below the chart, you can see again, did it the same way. I've got price channels, 20 period, and I've got area as the style, gray, and opacity at 0.3. And then I just put Aroon in the lower window. So this way I can show you what Aroon is telling you, because it's very important that you understand what that indicator is telling you. All right. A lot of people, I think, use indicators, but they don't fully understand exactly what they're telling them, what the indicator is saying. So what is Aroon telling us? Well, when Aroon down hits 100, as it did there towards the end of March, that means you've had a 20-day low. And this is 20 period Aroon you see here. And if you look at the price channel, the 20 period price channel, that's the 20-day low, and that's the 20-day high, the upper price channel. And you can see we moved below the lower price channel, and Aroon down hit 100. So that means you've got a 20-day low when Aroon down hits 100. There you can see that we've got a move above the upper price channel, and you can see Aroon up hits 100. That's the green line. And so what I'm watching for with IWM here is I see a combination. I see a volatility contraction on the Bollinger Bands. I also see a consolidation on the Aroons, which I'll show you just next. And so here's the level we need to watch going forward. All right, so here's a chart of IWM with Bollinger Bands. You can see there in pink. And we also have the Bollinger Band width in the first indicator window and the Aroons in the second indicator window. Now, first note that it's been a downward drift for IWM since the middle part of February. All right, we've got the lower low there. We're still below this May high. So it's still a choppy downward drift, because we've had a downswing, an upswing, a downswing. Got some sort of upswing possibly now, but it's not been a good performer over the last 5 months. Now, what we have happening right now is you can see that Bollinger Band width has been below 5. And, you got to look back at the chart. I looked at an 18-month chart, and I kind of decided on 5. All right, keep in mind when you're setting these levels, they're meant to serve as an alert to take a closer look at price action, because only price pays, as Brian Shannon of alphatrends.net quoted long ago. So if you look at here, we're getting the squeeze. And you can't really see on the Bollinger Bands just how tight they are on a relative basis there. They look kind of wide, but if we use the bandwidth indicator, we can see that this is a relatively tight band. They're relatively narrow, these bands. So that tells you you've had a volatility contraction. And then if we look at the Aroons, you can see both are falling, and both are, one's at 30 and one's at 15. So they're both falling in parallel fashion, and they are below, say, 40 or 50. I'd probably use 50 as a cutoff, as, I'll show a scan here in a minute. And when Aroons are low, both of them, and when they're falling in parallel fashion, that means you've got a consolidation on the price chart. And so now we're looking for the first Aroon to turn. So if Aroon up turns and breaks out above 50, preferably to 70, that's going to be bullish. And if Aroon down surges above 50 and possibly to 70, that is going to be bearish. Now, if we look on the price chart, we can see what looks like a surge. And this is a wedge type, flag type, pennant type consolidation. And there we can see 156 as a resistance level. And if we break out there, that's going to be bullish for IWM. Now we can also see the same thing happening with mid caps. And mid caps have gone nowhere as well since the middle part of February. The MDY has been above and below that 350 level. So if we look at the Bollinger Bands, I need to add a horizontal line there. So there I've got bandwidth, and I'm going to put a horizontal line if it'll stay open for me. There we go. And I'm going to put it at 5. I typically use 5 for ETFs that have dozens of moving parts, aka stocks. And for an individual stock, it changes. I'll do some individual stocks later here. And I'm going to go ahead and put a date and time axis to separate those two indicators there. I just like it that way to keep the chart fairly clean. There you can see that extra date and time axis there. And so what we've got here is we've got a consolidation here. We got a big surge. We've got a consolidation. And you can see that bandwidth has been below 5 for most of July as we consolidate. And the Aroons are falling in parallel fashion, and they are both below 50. So we're watching for the first one to turn up and break. And if we get a breakdown here below 350, that's going to be bearish. But if we get a breakout here, that's going to be bullish for mid caps. So before I look at the banks, I want to show you why financials are important to small caps. So I Googled IWM iShares holdings, and there you can see the first result is from the iShares website. And if you go to the iShares website, you can see all the holdings that are in IWM. And they also break down the holdings according to sector, so you can see that as well. So on the right there, I've got a link for portfolio, and I click on that. I'm not interested in the individual stocks that are doing it, but if you look at the financials, the sector breakdown for IWM, look at financials, 17.72% of the ETF, the biggest sector in the small cap Russell 2000, basically. Healthcare is next at 17.4%. And this is why small caps are lagging. You can see technology is just 13.5%, whereas technology is 21% of the S&P 500, and you got XLK hitting a new high, semiconductors leading. So that's where S&P 500 is getting its outperformance. It's got heavy weighting in technology, and small caps do not. Small caps have financials, healthcare, and industrials at the top. All right, so let's start off with a couple of banking ETFs, because banking ETFs, they look pretty much like small caps. They've gone nowhere since the middle of February. This is KBE, and there you can see 43.29 on the close. And if you go back, you can see actually that's the latter part of January. So they've gone nowhere since the latter part of January. And there is a slight, well, maybe there's not a decline. Maybe it's just a consolidation. So you can see the swings down, up, down, and we're in an upswing right now, okay? I'll give KBE that, the bank ETF. Now, in the indicator window, I've got the Bollinger Band width indicator, and you can see we had a little squeeze in May, and then we broke down. We had a squeeze at the end of June there, and then we had a little breakout in July. But the way I combine Aroon and Bollinger Bands is when you get the squeeze, you look for the Aroon, one of the Aroons to turn up or down. So you can see here that we're getting the squeeze in June and July, and there we got the sharp upturn in Aroon up. So we got a signal there, and we got another signal right there at the end of June when we got that bounce here. So right now, I would say we're on a bullish signal, at least short term, for KBE. All right, long term, it's not a leader. Long term, be hard pressed to argue for an uptrend because you're right at the falling 200-day moving average. But short term, yeah, I see something maybe happening here. There's a bit of a consolidation there. And so maybe the next thing to watch is for a breakout of that consolidation. So we look at regional banks. Now these are going to be the smaller banks. These are going to be the ones that are going to be in the Russell 2000 ETF, IWM. And we can see that they have gone nowhere as well over the last 5 or so months. And you got kind of like a big triangle consolidation. It's like the noose. It's one big tightening noose. And you're bouncing. Here we've got a little uptrend working since the latter part of May. So if we look at our indicators here, we can see there's a Bollinger Band squeeze at the end of June. And then you got, maybe there was a Bollinger Band squeeze a little bit earlier. And then you can see the Aroon up, turning up sharply at the end of June and hitting 100 there as we got a break above the upper Bollinger Band. So that is the active signal right now. And I don't think it has been negated. And you can see we're setting up for another signal right now because there is the falling Aroon indicators. They're both falling in parallel fashion. They're both below 50. So the next one to get that surge above 50 is going to trigger the next Aroon signal. And as far as support on this chart, if we break 52, I think that's going to be a big negative for regional banks. All right, so now I want to look at some of the too big to fail banks because they are showing some relative strength, if you will, especially when you look at JP Morgan and Citigroup, maybe even Goldman Sachs. So let's look at a handful of these to see what we have going on here. And we use the same indicators. We've got the Bollinger Band width indicator, and there you can see the squeeze in late June, early July, and then the breakout with the gap. And just before the squeeze, we had the Aroon cross here. So that one was a bit early. The Bollinger combination signal didn't happen until later. Now, if we look what's happening now, there you can see the Aroons are parallel and falling. So that means there's a consolidation on the chart. Get ready for some sort of a move. And there we can see we have this kind of wedge flag thingy after this advance. And we're on the verge of breaking out. So it looks like Bank of America could be poised to move higher heading into the next week is the Fed meeting. I think you need to think about these things a week ahead of time. You don't want to be thinking about banks next Wednesday after the Fed announcement. I think you need to be thinking about them now. We want to be ahead of the curve, not behind the curve. Proactive and not reactive. So if we look at Citigroup, okay, here's the interesting thing about Citigroup. Look at that. It's challenging the highs from April. So it's one of the stronger ones. And if you look at the price setup here, we had a little pullback there and we got the breakout. You can see we hit 5 level in late June. Didn't get a squeeze. We got a squeeze in May there. And then we got Aroon down triggering. And that was reversed. Maybe there was a squeeze there in June when we hit 5, and then Aroon up triggering there with that big surge. So Citigroup is just kind of consolidating after an advance. And if we get a breakout from this consolidation, that's going to signal a continuation higher. Here's Goldman Sachs. Now, I don't see much on this chart other than the fact that it did break above these highs here. It's trading at its highest level of 2019. So Goldman is not to be denied. And also notice that it happened after a big support break. So basically what you had here is you had this support break, but you can see you had a gap down and then a gap up and that was a bear trap right there. Next up is JP Morgan, and JP Morgan is one of the stronger of the big banks, and you can see that it's got an upward trajectory there working this year in 2019 because prices are doing the higher high, higher low thing. Yeah, you got a little bit of volatility. You know, you got this potential support break there that really didn't hold. You got a new high there and a pullback, and then the breakout, pretty sharp throwback, but a nice gap and breakout there. And you can see the Bollinger Band squeeze was on in June, and we got Aroon up surging in the latter part of June just before that breakout. So if you're scanning for something like that, that gives you the heads up to watch that chart just a little bit closer. So if we look at what's happening now, we're holding the zone here. Maybe that's a little flag wedge there, and watch for another breakout. But JP Morgan looks positive. And then Morgan Stanley. And I see an active Bollinger Band Aroon signal on Morgan Stanley, because there you can see we're below 5. So clearly we've got a squeeze going on. And there's Aroon up, surging. So we've got a signal there with that breakout. And nothing much going on outside of that active signal. And if you go below that low there, say 42.75, then you've negated it. You always got to look out, say, okay, that's the bullish setup. We're currently bullish right now, but what would it take to prove otherwise? If somebody's got a bearish bias, what are they seeing? Well, they're probably seeing a rising wedge here. But the wedge is rising. So if the wedge is rising, technically, price is rising. You're trending up. But if you break that wedge, then you've reversed that uptrend that's been in place since June. So I've got a little scan code. It's a very easy scan code. If you need to go back and find it, you can look at the YouTube recording of this video. It's around the 20-minute mark here. But what we got is we've got the S&P 500 is the group. There you can see I could change that to SP 400, SP 600 for the S&P Small Cap 600, or I could add all three if I wanted 1,500 stocks. I want the close to be above the 200-day. I want a longer-term uptrend in play. I want Bollinger Band width to be below 7. And then I want both Aroons to be below 35. And so this is going to filter out a lot of stocks. It's going to filter out stocks that are in downtrends. It's going to filter out stocks with high Bollinger Band width that have already moved. And it's going to filter out stocks that have Aroon up or down that's at a high level. So we should find some consolidations with this scan. So if I click run, I will get the results. And I got 25 results, which is doable. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace an existing chart list. And I got a scan dump 3 chart list. I'll put it in. And once it's in the chart list, you can do a 10 per page. So I've got this chart here, but I want to put the indicators on the chart. I want to put them on all the charts that are in this particular chart list, my scan dump. And so I created a chart style with those indicators. And there you can see your chart styles. And so I can scroll down, and I can scroll down to daily candle Bollinger Band Aroon. And I can apply that chart style. There it is, daily candle Bollinger Band Aroon. So that chart style is applied. And then if I scroll down, I can apply that style to all those charts in my chart list. Click OK, OK. And now all these charts will show the indicators I used in the scan that I set up. So I can go back to my view all, and I can see 10 per page, and I can see the setups that I like or that I dislike. So you can see here's analog devices, and you can also verify that your scan is working. You can see Bollinger Band width is below 7. Both Aroons are below 35. And you can see we've got some sort of a cup with handle working here. There is the cup, and there is the handle. I'm not going to look at all these charts. I just want to single out a couple of them for you. Of course, it is a bit difficult to find any stocks that are not reporting earnings soon, and most of them are reporting this week. We're reporting before July 31st. I found Tyson, which is reporting on August 5th, and you can see it fits the kind of setup I'm generally looking for. I'm looking for something that is in an uptrend. So we're clearly in an uptrend there. We're hitting 52-week highs, and then we're consolidating within that uptrend. And you can see we've got some higher lows. So we got a bit of an ascending triangle working there, and a breakout here would be bullish. And then you can see that the Bollinger Band width is below 7%. You can see both Aroons are well below 35. So we're looking for the first one to make that upturn and breakout there above 50, preferably to 70, to give us the next directional clue. So now I've got some stocks for you that are setting up and that are not reporting earnings in the next 2 weeks. They do not report until, or these stocks do not report until September or October. So the first one is Capital One Financial, which may be affected by the Fed. You can see there was a little bit of a flag and started breaking out. You had a consolidation before that and a breakout. But if I just look at now, and that's what's most important, you can see that this looks like a triangle above the 200-day moving average. And you had kind of a breakout zone there that turned into support and is holding. And look at the gap up off the last 2 days. So it looks like this one is poised for a breakout. Next up, we have Salesforce.com. Now, this one has struggled a little bit, but it's still in an uptrend. And there you can see the 200-day. We had that sharp move down with a gap and that recovery with a gap. And there's just a lot of support here. You have broken resistance there, and it's turning into support. So we're battling the support zone. And as far as a pattern at work, I don't need an arrow for that pattern, but I do need a line. So there we have kind of a triangle, and we're trying to break out, but getting us some selling pressure here. So be careful because this breakout might be failing. But if you want to go a little bit more short term even, you can see a potential consolidation there over the past week or so. And I will get my straight line on that for you. And there it is, a bit of a flag like consolidation. So a breakout there would be bullish. Next up is eBay, and eBay was profiled in Don't Ignore This Chart. And you can see it had a consolidation, and then you had the breakout. And more importantly, you can see that the breakout held as broken resistance turned into support, and it looks like we're bouncing off of that support zone. So eBay is a leader. Here is MongoDB, and this one is going to be a high risk, high volatility stock. As you can see, it's gone from basically 50 to 170 there. So it does not, it's not for the faint at heart here. But you had a consolidation here and a breakout, and you can see this kind of resistance zone turning support, and you came back to it and are trying to bounce off support here. Next up is NAPCO Security Technologies, and to be perfectly honest, I have no idea what they do. They just came up in one of my trend scans, and you can see that it's pulling back and getting some support. And again, you can see this is not a one for the faint at heart either. It went from basically 13 to almost 36, so it almost tripled there. And you can see you got a clear breakout there with that strong move above the resistance zone. Had a little consolidation after the breakout. I love consolidations after a breakout. It's a continuation pattern, and we continued higher. And now we're coming into a potential support zone and firming, and it looks like we could be bouncing off support here for NAPCO. All right, so that concludes this video or this show for On Trend. Be sure to tune in on Thursday for the State of the Stock Market show and subsequent video. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great day.
Here's how to add a moving average for the volume on your charts. You can't use this volume component here, so go down under Indicators, select Volume from the drop-down menu, and then put the period that you'd like on it, and you can specify the color of the moving average line. Click Update, and that will give you this nice little line on here so you can see if it's above or below average volume.